On today's show, the San Diego Padres take Game 1 against the Braves behind an absolutely sensational, dominant, demigod Super Saiyan performance from Michael King, as well as some absolutely fantastical offensive moments with Fernando Tatis Jr. and Kyle Higashioka. But whether or not there was some overall concerns with the offense, got a lot to talk about. Of course, it's playoff time, baby. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Padres, your daily San Diego Padres podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of Locked On Padres podcast, which is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day for Wednesday, October 2nd. As always, I am your host with sometimes, occasionally, but certainly not always the most, Javier Reyes. You can follow me on Twitter at Javipeno, Javiipeno, and at LO_Padres, the latter for just the updates on the show, and then my personal for just very silly tweets and updates about my personal work and the Padres, of course, too. You can also find my personal work on baseball at justbaseball.com, a fantastic website, as well as my other podcasts, Baseball versus the World, for more evergreen, very silly, very fun baseball topics. Folks, today's episode, you know what we're doing. We're recapping Game 1. That's what we're going to do. And it is a full recap. And I imagine that you guys are going to like it because the Padres were victorious by a score of 4-0. But there's a lot to talk about. You know what I mean? We're going to start with kind of the general vibe of this game and kind of the general feeling of like, wow, baseball's back. And I'm just really not baseball's back, but Padres playoff baseball is back. And I know that's not been like a rarity over these last 5 seasons. So they had 2020 and 22, but it just feels so fulfilling and just good, you know, this time. I don't know how to explain it. You guys know what I mean. But today's episode, guys, by the way, is brought to you by Booking.com. The right stay can make you a fan of any city, even your baseball rivals. Book today on Booking.com, the official accommodation partner of Major League Baseball. Go check out and get the Booking.com app today. Man, first thing that I got to talk about is just the atmosphere. I mean, I have to start here. The atmosphere of the game was phenomenal. It's just really cool. And frankly, it was just really cool hearing like ESPN broadcast. And not necessarily like the specifics of the broadcast. I mean, everyone has their own opinion on the broadcasters and whatnot. I'm more saying just like, yeah, that's when you know we're in the playoffs and whatnot. That's when you know it's like a really big national game and what have you. And playoff baseball in general yesterday was really electric. And it's actually funny that I would say overall that the Padres game in totality, so hear me out of all the playoff games yesterday, was probably the least, not least electric, but the least tense, I'd say, because the Mets and Brewers game was tense until the one inning when the Mets broke out. Royals-Orioles ended with a 1-0 score. Tigers-Astros was 3-1, and they almost came back at the very, very end with bases loaded. So the Padres actually, by comparison, it was pretty smooth sailing, and I will say it was just really fun seeing all the fans and whatnot, everybody going nuts. I was upset that we did not see Emma Stone there, of course. I'm a little bit surprised, frankly, that we didn't see her. Maybe we'll see her at a future one. Right? Maybe we'll see her in tomorrow's game, maybe game 3, or potentially if they go farther, another series. So we'll have to see on that point. But I really like that when they were announcing the players, that it was reported that Ha-Seong Kim received like the biggest standing ovation, which I just really, really appreciate. Kim, I think over the last year and a half especially, and it started last year, I think that his first season he was just kind of there, and then his second season was pretty solid, but I don't think people appreciate him as much as they should have. And then obviously last year when he really took another leap offensively and was very, very good for the team, I think he became a real beloved favorite. Manny Machado loves him, always talking in Korean saying he loves him and all that stuff. It's just really cool because he's not going to be with the team for the postseason. He's out with an injury. He's going to be a free agent, and he might not even be back with the team. Now, that's something that we'll talk about over the offseason, right? Whether or not they should sign him or re-sign him. Talked about it a little bit, actually, on the Monday mailbag. But overall, just I love that. I don't know. It just made me really almost emotional. I was just that's really nice for the Padres fans. And in general, the atmosphere was great. I was seeing, the waving around the flag was not a flag, but a yellow. Was it a towel almost? That's what it looked like. It was giving terrible Tower of the towel of the Pittsburgh Steelers, which is a problem for one reason. And the reason is because one of my closest friends is a big Steelers fan, and I literally make fun of the Steelers all the time for like doing that. You know what I mean? I always just think it's like the silliest thing. Oh, the terrible towel. Ooh, you know, it's like a 3-year-old came up with that. They're like, hey, let's do towel and terrible. You know what I mean? I don't know. It's just very silly. But overall, atmosphere is great. Saw us like a couple people with some golden like crowns for Michael King, which was very great. Him making his first career postseason start. And that is, you know, makes you nervous. But I think that it was very telling that the Padres decided, despite the fact that they have Joe Musgrove and you have Yu Darvish still, who's expected to be available out of the bullpen for this series, and then you've got Dylan Cease, right, who's the big name, I think, out of everybody. The fact that they gave Michael King the first game start, I think, spoke in volumes to the Padres management, coaching staff, etc., in their confidence in him. But frankly, I can't lie to you, I was still a little bit nervous, and it starts off a little bit, I'm like, oh no, right? It starts off with a Michael Harris single, first at bat of the game. But basically after that, you guys saw the game. Michael King was absolutely disgusting. One of the best playoff pitching performances that I've seen in a vacuum. And the reason I say in a vacuum is because we've seen, like, you know, World Series games, like a little bit higher leverage, right? Like the winner take all stuff. That's what I'm saying. But in a vacuum, one of the best playoff starts I have seen. The Braves simply could not hit this guy. I mean, they were just befuddled. They were confused. I was almost confused just trying to watch him pitch. And the thing with Michael King, we talked about this year, is that I wasn't always, you know, super on the bandwagon. I was wrong about him, and I was worried. To a large degree with Michael King, and saying, you know, this is still a guy who's been like a long inning reliever. How much is he going to translate? And, you know, he at first started off really big dip in the velocity, and he wasn't getting as many strikeouts as we would have liked. And he was giving up a lot of home runs. So my thing was like, that's not usually a good combination. But as the season progressed, he became the most consistent pitcher. And in my opinion, the best pitcher on the Padres when you just look at the overall you know, kind of season this year. I think that there are pitchers who could be better. Maybe the raw talent might be a little bit better, like your Dylan Cease. But overall, Michael King was the guy. So it's not that it's just really cool that they gave him that vote of confidence, and it completely panned out with him going absolutely nuclear. 7 innings in this game, no walks, 5 hits allowed, which is okay. He wasn't invincible. You know, he wasn't pure, you know, Dr. Manhattan untouchable, but even still, 12 friggin' strikeouts on the night. The best starting pitching performance probably of the afternoon, with only Tariq Skubal of the Tigers, who went 6 innings, gave up no runs either, 4 hits, 1 walk, 6 Ks. It's the only other pitching performance really that was close to it. Michael King was he was aces. And welcome, all of you, to the Michael King experience, because I feel like he has not been talked enough on a national level. Which is somewhat understandable. There are still like plenty of stars. You've got your Musgrove, who triggers the New York media because of what he did to the Mets. You've got Darvish, who's been a superstar for a long time, and especially internationally. And then you've got Dylan Cease, who was the big trade deadline one. So I understand to a degree why Michael King isn't as well known. But for all you folks out there, oh man, you must have had fun. Welcome to the club. Welcome to the Michael King, not even hive, because it's bigger than a hive. Welcome to the kingdom of Michael King, for lack of a better pun that I can't come up with off the top of my head. We're going to talk a little bit more about the performance in detail, though, as well as talking about the rest of the game and some other observations in just a minute, guys. But first, I must talk to you about the legendary, the impeccable, the sensational FanDuel. They've been a sponsor of this podcast for a very, very long time. You guys know about them. They are America's #1 sportsbook, always helping you with getting a big old return, especially for you NFL fans out there. When you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. And you guys know me. I always give you all the best offers. Okay, you can thank me later. I get it. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's a crazy offer. So what are you waiting for? Go check it out. FanDuel.com, America's #1 sports book. But that is not it. We also got to talk about another longtime sponsor and a lovely sponsor of this podcast. That is Prize Picks, ladies and gentlemen, with over 10 million members and billions, that's right, billions of dollars in awarded winnings. Prize Picks has made daily fantasy accessible to all. It is the best #1 daily fantasy sports platform. It's great. We love Prize Picks very much on here, and what I love about them the most is that you just got to pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections, and you can just watch them winnings roll on in, ladies and gentlemen. It's fantastic. It is the best way to get in on action for a bunch of different sports in over 30 states, including California, Florida, Georgia, and Texas. You can win 100 times your money with as little as 4 correct picks, and also they've got all sorts of deals all the time, right? You just check the app. They've got different offers for you. They've got different little bonuses to lower select stat projections and whatnot that you have to hit the over under on. Every now and then you can find deals for those. And they've got a nice community too. If you want to play alongside some folks like Joe Budden and Drewski and MMA champ Sugar Sean O'Malley, you can now find community plays under the promos tab of the app to view entries from some of the biggest names in the Prize Picks community each and every week. And guess what? If you sign up today, you get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to get the bonus. And they also offer some stuff like big payouts like Taco Tuesday. Each Tuesday, Prize Picks discounts select player projections up to 25% to provide even more value for your lineups. Like I was saying, man, that's just one promotion. That's just one. They got plenty of them. So guys, go check out Prize Picks, download the app, and use code LOCKEDONMLB to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Remember, download the app, use the code LOCKEDONMLB, $50 instantly after your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. And just like that, everybody, we are back thriving and vibing into segment number 2. It's your boy Javier Reyes, JAVIIPENO on Twitter, Javapeno. I'm also being joined by Tatis and Pikachu. If you're watching on YouTube, be sure to do that. Obviously available on wherever your preferred podcast platform is, but the YouTube is also very good. We're closing in on actually I think we're almost at 1,900 subs, so hopefully we can keep getting those over the playoffs. Hopefully the Padres keep winning, and we can keep having everybody look at my ugly face, I guess, on YouTube. But anyway, guys, in terms of this start, I wasn't kidding around when I said it was one of the great postseason starts I've ever seen. Yes, the only caveat would be is that it wasn't like a World Series game, right? And we've seen that there are Madison Bumgarner. That's the one that I think everybody knows. The fact that he went multiple games and just had a crazy run in the postseason, right? But in terms of just a single postseason game, check this out, all right? Michael King is the first pitcher in postseason history to go 7+ innings, scoreless, with 12+ strikeouts and no walks. The first pitcher in postseason history. Now I understand you might be saying, well, those are a little bit cherry-picked. It's specifically 7+, specifically 12+, and specifically scoreless. Yeah, well, still, those are nutty numbers. The fact that nobody else has ever done that in their first career postseason start, that's the thing. I was not expecting this. I was excited about Michael King, but we've seen pitchers who are really dominant in the regular season and kind of blow up, who are more talented and more kind of generational than Michael King, like Clayton Kershaw of the Dodgers. There's I don't mean to just only pick on the Dodgers, but that's one of the first ones that comes to mind. Luis Severino for the Mets yesterday, he had a great regular season, breakout season with the Yankees, and his first start, he got lit up for 5 or 6 runs. Don't quote me on that, but he got kind of lit up in his first start. Yankees ended up winning that game because their offense went nuclear. But overall, it's not some guarantee that your success will translate. And I think that that's what's so fascinating about baseball is this is where the legends are made. You know what I'm saying? You can be an all-star, you can even be an MVP, but where you become a legend, where everyone remembers you and they remember, hey, that guy was great in the playoffs, man. That's kind of what the playoffs are for. This is why Derek Jeter took on such a greater, kind of legacy, because he had so many clutch moments in the postseason, right? And I think that means a lot, right? And there are some guys on this team who have been accused of not being as clutch, right? Manny Machado being one of them. Even though I think I would push back a little bit on that narrative, it is true. And I think that in this game, Michael King shows up, was absolutely dominant, 19 whiffs across his pitches, 2-seam fastball was working, 4-seam fastball. Someone actually texted me from justbaseball.com and was saying that Michael King is a little bit similar to Aaron Nola. And I know that might sound like an insult, but it's really not. And what he meant by that was one of the things that made Aaron Nola such an enticing pitcher for such a long time, and he's still a very good pitcher, by the way. He's guaranteed 200 innings every year. What made him such an enticing, oh my God, is this guy going to win a Cy Young one day, was the fact that he had such a brilliant pitch mix, right? Like, he used to throw very consistently 4 pitches about at an even rate, which was what was so fascinating about him, especially like 2020, especially 2019, maybe some couple years before that. Like, he has such an even repertoire, and that's what King showed last night, and that's what he's been showing all year. And when you saw, and I pointed this out in a show ages ago, when you saw that his usage balanced out and he wasn't only favoring his changeup or only favoring his sinker, whatever you have, he started doing a lot better. He figured out what to attack, when to attack, and that's what makes him such a devastating pitcher, because you also don't know what he's going to throw. I'm not saying there aren't pitchers out there who you kind of know what they're going to throw. You still have to locate, right? But him, you don't even know what kind of pitch he's going to throw. So the fact that he can be used as like, he's got this Swiss Army knife repertoire that no matter what the lineup is, he can kind of take advantage of it. So in some ways, on paper, it's not surprising what Michael King did, but it's still wild in terms of legacy with that stat that I just let you guys know. I also liked they showed it on the broadcast, the Michael King quote, and I'm not gonna lie, I don't remember him saying this. I did not remember him saying this, that he was like, yeah, the Padres won the trade. And like, that is such confidence King stuff right there. Like, amazing. Like, I'm trying to find the exact quote right now. If I can see where it is right now. Yeah, but he said the Padres won the trade. He said, we won the trade. You know what I mean? Like, we got more pieces in return. And I'm like, that's so baller. You know what I mean? And for him to back it up, I mean, come on, you don't get more kingly than that. That's just amazing stuff. For you to basically be like, yeah, they got me, so that's why we won. And for you to go out in the postseason and be this good on top of the top 5 like Cy Young voting season, can't get any better than that. So shout out to Michael King. Saw his parents at one point. His dad was losing his mind, excited for him getting that 12th strikeout when they brought him in for the 7th inning. No guarantee that you go super strong into 7, and he did. I know that this Braves lineup is a little bit depleted, but still, these are still names, as I talked about with Jake Mastriani of Locked On Braves yesterday. These are still names. These are still guys that can hit. And you even have like a guy like Ozzy Albies he had a stolen base at one point in the bottom of the, I think, or top of the 8th inning, and that was nerve-wracking because it's like Albies ain't scared. The inning could end there, but he's like, nope, they have postseason experience, so that does mean something. But it did not matter to one Sir Michael King, man. I mean, just there's nothing else really to say, I think, with Michael King. Nothing else to say. But there is something else to say with the Padres offense in this game. By the way, they scored 4 runs. I forgot to tell you guys, 4-0 win for the Padres. And boy, did it start off strong, specifically with our guy, our legend, our heart and soul of Padre land, Fernando Tatis Jr. First, a Luis Arraez single to start off the game. Great. Talked about a lot how I think that there's potential for Arraez to just be an absolute nuisance in the playoffs and be the type of batter that opposing teams just don't want to face, because you just know at minimum he's putting the ball in play, and that's really frustrating, right? So it's possible this guy has like a 650 batting average in the postseason. I'm dead serious. Like that, it wouldn't shock me if he does something like that. It's only a certain amount of games. But after that, Fernando Tatis Jr., first pitch, yeets the ball into left field. The storage supply company, not quite there exactly, but absolutely killed it. He pimps it. He does the thing where he starts pumping his chest. He's running around like a lunatic, and it was so lovely. I got a bunch of texts at the same time from like 5 different people who were like, Tatis is unbelievable. How did you have this guy? And hey, to give a little bit of shout, Jeff Snyder of Locked On Dodgers, he always tweets hateful stuff about the Padres. Of course, he's a Dodgers fan. Of course he does. But even he always talks about, he's like, dang, like, I really hate that I'm going to have to root against this guy because he's awesome. Like, even Jeff said that. Then that's who Tatis is. He is a guy who always rises to the moment, whether it be, and by the way, it's been a while, right? In 2022, he wasn't on the team. He was suspended and injured. So he didn't get to see the playoffs that time. And he's had such a long road since then, so getting back to kind of his former self, because he was humbled in a lot of ways by that experience, and by all accounts he was really like a humbled player even in Bob Melvin era, right? Like when Bob Melvin was saying, yeah, he comes into the lineup, he's like, wherever you want me to hit, whatever you want me to do, I do it. Like, clearly trying to earn favor back with the team and clubhouse that I think was clearly frustrated with him after the 2022 suspension, and justifiably so. They had just traded for Juan Soto, so like, it's kind of amazing to see, like, full circle, dare I say, like, it's just a growth moment of, I'm not saying that Tatis is the worst person in the world or anything like that. I think that he's a kid who made some mistakes, and I think it's weird to jump down his throat versus some other characters that we have in the league, if you know what I'm saying. But like, I didn't understand that, but I do understand that you kind of let the team down. They just traded all this stuff for Juan Soto. They're about to get you back, and then it's like, just kidding, we don't have you. So really boneheaded thing. And then look where we are now. It's amazing how much things can change in the postseason. Of course, he's the guy that scores the first runs for the Padres this postseason run. So love to see that. But I must say, overall, Padres offense wasn't good. Are we sure? We're going to talk about that in just 1 second, guys. But first, I must talk to you about the impeccable title sponsor of this podcast. And, your boy's actually going to be going on a trip soon, too. I might be using this application myself because I want to make a trip out to San Diego if they last long enough and maybe go catch a game at Petco. Ooh, I might have to, folks. And you know what can help you out with that? This episode of Locked On Padres is brought to you by Booking.com. Booking.yeah. The right stay can make you a fan of any city, even your baseball rivals. Book today on Booking.com, the official accommodation partner of Major League Baseball. Hotels, bed and breakfast, vacation rentals, resorts, and so much more. You can find whatever your perfect stay, whatever fits your plans, your budget. If you want to just taste every stadium's cuisine, Booking.com. You can start planning trips all across the country very, very easily. And they have a variety of choices across the U.S. You can go incognito, right? You can do all sorts of things with Booking.com. You don't have to make it a big thing, but I really love it. It's just such a really easy app to use. And it's family friendly. They point you out all the best stuff. So go check it out. Download the app, guys. It'll help make you a fan of any city, including your baseball rivals. Booking.com, booking.yeah. And just like that, everybody, we are back here on the Locked On Padres podcast, thriving and vibing as always. Hopefully you are enjoying the show and enjoying I hope you had a nice sleep last night. I hope you've had a nice morning too. I hope maybe you're driving in your car to work right now and you're just like, man, it feels good to listen to a victory podcast. Now, I will say, let's do some light criticism with this Padres team. And again, it's the postseason, so I'm not making like all-encompassing indictments. Like, I don't like it when people do that where they're like, you gotta have a better at-bat there. It's like, but it's baseball, man. Like, to a degree, it's like you're only gonna get like 3 of them, so it's like very weird to like really get on guys sometimes in the postseason. But that being said, Fernando Tatis Jr. was awesome. We were just talking about him before. Entering into last night, he had a career postseason OPS over 1,100 with 2 home runs. Now he's got 3 home runs, right? So now he's got an even better OPS. Even though he didn't do anything for the rest of the game, he did enough, right? With the 2 RBIs. With the home run. He also did draw a walk, which I will say. Wanted to see him potentially steal a base. I wouldn't have minded that maybe, but it's okay. For me, the disappointment, we forgot to mention, by the way, that while this lineup is the exact same as before, I am a little bit wondering about Jake Cronenworth. They moved him down. You know what I mean? They moved him down all the way behind Bogarts, which I thought was very interesting. This could be a matchup thing, because remember that Jake Cronenworth does struggle against lefties. So this could be some sort of thing where Mike Schultz is saying, you know what, depending on the matchup, we might move him up or down, depending on how certain guys work, which is totally fine. Cronenworth had been struggling a little bit. He didn't do anything in this game really all that much. So that's okay. It happens. But in this game, after the bottom of the second inning, which sees Kyle Higashioka hit a sac fly, allowing Jake Cronenworth to score, after that making it 3-0, it was 1-2-3 in every inning up until the bottom of the 8th inning. And they just didn't look great. Xander Bogaerts had some really bad at-bats. He had some really bad swings about some stuff outside the zone. That wasn't great. I think that that's the biggest complaint, is that it was all 1-2-3 innings. Some strikeouts. They had a really bad moment when Luis Ariz, he grounded into a double play. And my one friend joked maybe he should. Maybe he shouldn't, maybe he should strike out sometimes, is what a friend of mine joked. He's kidding, of course. And then you had a Manny Machado ground out. He didn't do too much, so not easing the slander yet so far for Mr. Manny when it comes to his postseason numbers. But I think that that it was a little bit disappointing that they were unable to kind of keep it going. Thankfully, Michael King was so aces that it did not matter. He was just so unstoppable. And then the fact that you can turn it to Jason Adam and Robert Suarez. Jason Adam, by the way, 1 inning in this one. He gives up 1 hit. He does give up 1 hit. Who did he give up the hit to, by the way? I almost forgot. Who was it? It was Ozzy Albies, and then he's the one that stole second that I was mentioning earlier. But he gets 3 strikeouts. And by the way, he generated 7 whiffs on 15 pitches. That's obscene, man. Jason Adam looked absolutely locked in. We talked about for the regular season, just to reiterate, if there ever does come a time when you're wondering, should Robert Suarez be the closer? We've had some issues with him lately. I am very curious to see if Mike Schilt is one of those guys who's like, nope, this has been our guy all season long. We're keeping it that way. Or, in my opinion, a guy that would suit as a every now and then replacement, given the opportunity, would be Jason Adam, because he's dealt with that in Tampa. Sometimes being a saves guy, other times not. He was part of a committee, so he's used to a fluctuation in roles. If there is some sort of mental calculus that needs to be done with these guys being just not used to the role that they're in, maybe that's what we could expect. But that's insane. I can't emphasize enough how much 7 whiffs on 15 pitches is. Like, that's just absolutely nuts. And then Robert Suarez comes in, 1 inning, doesn't get a strikeout or anything like that. He does give up a hit, but only 8 pitches, still gets the save, and that's all you can ask for. But overall, this team does do the 1-2-3 thing, and I think that was bad, and I did not think the at-bats were great. Manny Machado striking out a couple times. He had the double play, too. Just not a great game for him. Xander Bogaerts with a really poorly hit ball to third base. Just not great. Jackson Merrill, he does get a hit. Forgot to mention him. He is now the youngest player in Padres history to record a postseason hit, which is awesome. Very much so. Congratulations to him. And then, of course, until the bottom of the 8th inning, like I was mentioning, Kyle Higashioka adding on some extra run insurance with a solo shot off of some Anderson fellow. Who was it? Was it Jackson? Yeah, it was Luke Jackson. Same name as someone else that I might know. But anyway, that was really cool. We talked about Higgy. He entered a little bit of a slump, I think, towards the end of the year. Just a little bit. And I don't really care about that because he's a catcher, and kind of anything you get from a catcher offensively is always a bonus. But even still, I think that it's still worth bringing up that he had been struggling a little bit as of late. And he hits the shot. If you can get anything at him, that's great. This might not be the last home run you see from this guy. I'm serious. Might not be the last home run that we get from our guy here. I'm being dead serious. I think that he is just one of those guys who keeps rising to the occasion. There's something special about him. Again, 38 WRC plus in September and October. But overall, he'd been really good. He had that 3-month stretch, 206 WRC plus in June, 135 in July, and then 119 in August. I think that's probably more, I think he's an average, above average bat, but he's a super above average catcher based on how he's been hitting this year. So again, I'm hopeful that this isn't the last time we'll see a nice clutch insurance run, or even go ahead run, or even tying run moment from Kyle Higashioka, who also was great behind the dish, even if that Ozzy Albies stolen base, he didn't make the best throw. Can't hate him too much for that, though. But that's basically it, guys. This was a really fun game just to be a part of. I like that there wasn't like all that much stress, and we just got to see basically, we got like 3 things, right? Merrill becoming the youngest player ever, right? Postseason for the Padres. You had the Tatis home run, you had the Higgy home run, and then you have Michael King. So that's like 4 things. But you guys get my point, right? So I think that was kind of the easy way to sum it up. In a lot of ways, you don't need a 30-minute podcast to break down the entire thing for you. It was a pretty straightforward game, and there wasn't really anything to freak out or complain about. I know that the offense wasn't very good there, but we're going to have to see. I'm just saying that 3 up, it feels like they might have gotten a little bit too excited and they were trying to push for things too much. Thankfully, they didn't have too many strikeouts, but I do think that guys like Bogaerts, guys like Mann needs to step it up a little bit more, hopefully in game 2, because the Padres did get a little bit lucky in the sense that they were able to face AJ Smith-Shawver to start this game, and he's the one that they lit up, and then they had to go immediately into their bullpen and some other guys. And tomorrow's game, though, that will not be the case. They do get one of their great starters, and that is former Padre Max Fried. Of course, we've got Joe Musgrove on the bump. I super trust him, don't get me wrong, but even still, Max Fried, he has delivered many, many times in the postseason. So the Padres need to be on their A game and cannot rely on the fact that they won't be facing the best of the best. You know what I mean? They were before yesterday. They got to coast a little bit. This time, I don't know, man. I don't know, Jim. So we'll see how that all goes. But let me tell you, career ERA in the postseason. How many runs has this guy given up? I'm trying to see. Earned runs. Where can I see an ERA? I can't see an ERA average. What do we got here? I can't see it based on Baseball Reference, but you know what? Whatever. All I know is that Max Fried has been very good in the postseason for the majority of his career, has had some really good starts, and he's the type of pitcher that's not going to blow away the Padres lineup with strikeouts. And he's also maybe a little bit of revenge game, potentially. Could that be something that's coming? Maybe. It could be. Right? So I'm a little bit worried about that. He is a former Padre, so we'll have to see. But hey, we're just going to have to see. And like I tweeted yesterday, that I want to remind everybody about, that I had tweeted right before the game started, that as we head into the playoff game, just want to say covering this team this year has filled me with so much ebullient joy. I've entered a genuine piece of serenity watching this team this year. And I think it's important just to cherish every moment regardless of the outcome. I really do believe that. But hopefully we still blow the Braves out of the water. So that about does it for today's edition of the Locked On Padres podcast, the only pod that may be a bit different than the Padres themselves. Remember to subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your podcasts from. Follow me on Twitter at Javipeno, JAVIIPENO, or at LO_Padres. And until next time, which is tomorrow for Game 2, stay safe and, of course, stay faithful. My Friar Faithful homies, take care.